So it's been proven out both biblically and scientifically that our thinking, what we think, really shapes how we act, how we behave, how we live our life. I mean, Jesus said it. He was quoting a proverb 23:7, where he said, "As a man thinks in his heart, or his innermost being, so is he." And then he later on he said, "Out of the overflow of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks." Matthew 12:34. Scientifically, it's been proven that these things called neurons that are firing off in our brain, and it determines a lot about who we are and what we do and how and why we do what we do. According to a magazine called Outreach Magazine, they did this article that said that the human brain, is composed of approximately 100 billion interconnected neurons, which we call gray matter. Neurons are cells that process and transmit information in the brain through this thing called synapses, and it has bridges of electronic, like bing, 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 things are firing all the time, and they carry these transmitted messages to the rest of our body. Neurons are birthed by thoughts. In other words, the more you think the same thought, the more neurons are developed around that thought, and the stronger and the more influential that thought becomes. Thoughts are important because they then influence our emotions, our emotional state, and the decisions that really drive our behavior. In 1949, a Canadian psychologist named Donald Hebb published a theory that can be summarized by saying the neurons that fire together wire together. One way to understand his theory is to picture like a muddy road where a number of cars drive down the same muddy road, and they develop this ruts basically in the mud. Now when the mud dries, you get these deep ruts that are very hard to drive out of once you get in them. So you try to stay out of the ruts, because you get in those ruts, it's hard. I've heard this before, that a rut is like a grave with the ends knocked out when it comes to our thinking. You just get in this rut and you can't get out. In fact, on the Alaska Highway, there used to be a sign that said, "Be careful how you choose your ruts, because you're going to be in it for the next 500 miles." And the more cars, the more traveling down there, the deeper the ruts become. So in terms of our brains, when you choose to repeatedly engage in the same thought process again and again, and it just swirls around, you keep going in there, there's neurons firing around that, and they become deeply embedded into your brain, making it's your default. The repeated focus on a particular thought pattern it has a term, and they actually call it the quantum Zeno effect. Neuroscientists refer to the quantum Zeno effect as attention density. Simply put, the more you pay attention to a particular thought, the longer it stays in place, so that the neurons that firing around it, they make it stick in your brain, and it works like super glue. Now, maybe this is why Jesus said, "Do not worry." Matthew 6:25. Don't worry. To worry is to think the same negative thought over and over and over again, and constant negative thinking. It's just going to produce harmful emotions. It's going to produce things like toxic shame and fear and hopeless just despair. Scripture places great emphasis on the power of our thinking, in particularly being salt and light. Why you do what you do? What is your behavior based on what you're thinking about? So the following passages in the New Testament really talk about the importance of and the outcome of right thinking. Right thinking is called orthodoxy. And then the actions that come from that right thinking is called orthopraxy, or the right practices, putting right thinking into practice. So Romans 12:2 says, "Be transformed by the renewal of your mind." So again, it's your thinking. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion. Where are they? Up here. That is raised against the knowledge of God, and we take every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. That's 2 Corinthians 10:5. Listen to this one. We could do a whole study on it. "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. That's Philippians 4:8. And the thing is, every one of those things, Jesus fits the bill on every one of them. So keep your thoughts fixed on Jesus. And finally, it actually says, set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. Colossians 3:2. So it really, really matters what we choose to think on, what we choose to dwell on. We can choose to worry. We can choose to think negative thoughts. We can choose to be afraid, fearful things. We can focus on those things. Or we can focus our thinking on Scripture and what God says is true. Our choices will produce radically different results. Think on these things.